able to produce. We only produced 10, but likewise, no one was able to produce a strong team of 36.
And well, I'm not going to defend it, but the PLP did what is typical in terms of, because I, for example, right, I ran once in C12.
Correct.
And it wasn't like, okay, fine, anybody just threw it on there. It was, you need to have somebody who understands it's not a winnable seat, but still go there. And it was nice because I canvassed Lady Gibbons. That made me smile because nobody had ever canvassed her.
Yes.
Even UBP, nobody had canvassed her, right? And she called me to thank me. Didn't vote for me, I don't think, but still, you know what I mean? So that door's worked.
It's very instructive.
Yeah.
Look.
Yeah, one.
You sure?
Yeah, I can hear you. Maybe you pull your want to pull your thing off. Yeah.
Sorry.
Sure.
It's very instructive when you're able to go and canvass in seats that are not traditionally from where you're from. Okay, so when you go in a constituency 12, or you go in a constituency 8, or for instance, and you are a PLP person, boy, it is some lesson to be taught.
Correct.
Likewise, I would think that it's, on the other hand, the same applies to those in the OBA who go into maybe Bacatown or
15,
Somerset. You know, it's a different experience. You're not used to it.
Yes.
But it's a valuable experience because now you get a real glimpse of what Bermuda really is in terms of its representation.
Yes.
It's not homogenous. You have different views, different classes, different races, different wealth, different everything.
Yes.
And so, you know, that is very instructive if you're developing your political career to go in these places where you cannot win, but at least you get the appreciation of the realities on the ground.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so we can go back and forth for sure, but one of my questions then becomes, based on what you said, in that Bermuda has to move beyond, you called it identity politics, so a racially divide, right? Actually, the question should say, is it then correct that the OBA has to fold into the FDM in order for you to be successful, in order to take it away?
No. Well, this is what, in terms of a vision, this is what we would like to see. Okay? And it might not happen tomorrow, but it will happen sooner or later. And I guarantee you someone's going to pop up in a few years and repeat it and act like it came from their mouth.
Yes.
Okay? So good. But what we would like to see is, we would like to see, and I'm going to address it straight on, heads on, we would like to see white Bermudians to vote based on their ideological orientation.
Okay.
They hate conservatism. They listen to MSNBC.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they love Kamala Harris. They love Barack Obama.
Yes.
For all intents and purposes, they are the definition of white liberals. And there's plenty of them. But when it comes to the PLP in Bermuda, they wouldn't vote for the PLP.
Correct.
Okay. Likewise, you have white conservatives who naturally vote OBA, but not because of their ideological orientation, but because of their race. They're naturally inclined to say, well, go in with the OBA.
Yes.
All right. What we would like to see in the future are these white Bermudians who are ideologically conservative to consider voting for the Free Democratic Movement, and those Bermudians, white Bermudians who are liberal, who are more liberal, right, to vote for the Progressive Labour Party. You can't say it's not being done. They got Jonathan Smith, you got Lauren Haywood Bow, you got Jonathan Starling. You have examples of white Bermudians, Zane De Silva. You have white Bermudians who are part of the Progressive Labour Party. And that's fine. That's actually how it should be. What we are suggesting is that for Bermuda to transcend race and identity politics is going to require not the OBA folding into the FDM. It's going to require the OBA folding, okay, and allowing its membership to
choose where to go.
Okay. If you are a liberal, and if you feel that the policies that are being espoused by the Progressive Labour Party, you know, then you should vote for them. Because I'll tell you what, the policies that they do push, as you will know, are very much aligned with the democratic policies in the United States. It's very much. And so if you could support it in the States when you're watching TV and you say, I hate Trump, I hate Orange Man, I hate this, I hate that,
right,
and then come and say, well, I hate David Byrd too, then that's just a sign that you have to look within because you're a walking contradiction.
Okay. Well.
Okay. And I think that it would be best for Bermuda when we can remove all the contradictions, not just those in white Bermuda, but all of us are walking sometimes as hypocrites, and that's something that has to change.
Well, good evening, caller. Thank you for calling Insight. What's your question or comment?
Good evening. How are you doing?
Fine, thanks.
Good evening.
Well, say for the last 4 years, to 1,461 days, the progressive has the power. Yeah, they get the main taxes from customs duty, payroll tax, hotel occupancy tax,
yes,
tax, land tax, and tax, company tax, and stamp duty, and vehicle tax. That's revenue. And, for the next 4 years, that's about $4 billion a year.
yes.
And the expenditure is salary and wages, other goods and services, and grants and contributions. That's what I got to say.
Yes.
Have a nice 4 years. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Okay. To be honest, I'm not sure what his comment was there, except that, yes, every government has been getting the revenue and expenditure more or less from the same for what, basically.
Yeah.
So it hasn't changed. Yeah. But, so, again, I'm very intrigued with your comment now in terms of the OBA having to fold, and they're enforcing, my words, their voting base to choose who to vote for.
Yeah, because the OBA doesn't stand a real chance of getting elected in the near future. Okay.
Based on
the fact that you have too many seniors who have not forgotten.
Who don't call it?
Their experiences, that what they went through in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, and they to this day remain the main voting base in the country, whether it's for OBA or PLP, and as a result, it's just it's just math, it's just straight up numbers,
yes,
right? And so, they might think that they done well by getting an additional 3-4 seats, but man, that's not, I'm sorry, but
there's no second place. I got you.
Yeah, I mean, that's not good enough.
Sure.
That's not good enough. And so if that is your state and that's where you think that's how far you're going to aspire towards, then it's time to actually have a serious look on how the country can advance by making certain decisions. Don't say that it can't be done because they done it before with the OBA, the UBP, and the BDA.
Yes. Okay.
They did it. We saw it. We were there. Right? And so when it comes down to being pragmatic and making decisions that even serve their interests, then I'm putting it out there for them to consider. I'm putting it out to white Bermuda that if you want to avoid being politically marginalized for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, then the more you try to hold on to, the more you stand to lose. You're going to have to give up something. And giving that something up is that attitude that has to change. You say, you know what? I could actually be part of a political movement based on their ideology.
And that's interesting. So is Mark being the correct messenger for that message to white Bermuda?
I might not be the correct messenger, but I guarantee you I am the messenger.
Whoa.
I didn't say I'm the correct. I'm not the person. I might not be the person that actually brings this to fruition, right? And it manifests. I might be laying the groundwork for someone else to come forward and carry it back to him. But one thing is for sure, it's going to probably be the most important step in terms of our maturation process that the country's had in the last 40, 50 years. Now, make no mistake, if you ask anyone in the PLP, is that ultimately beneficial from a political perspective? Your answer would be...
You mean for the OBA to fold?
Yes.
That's interesting. So would the PLP want the OBA to fold? Well, let's come back to that. Good evening, caller. Thank you for your patience. What's your question or comment?
Yes. Interesting, very insightful. You're living up to the title of your show. The intuition, discernment, and perception of your guests Mark, is what we need. There are differences between us, which I really, really encourage, because out of disagreement, we can have oneness, which is essentially what it's saying. We need to, correct me if I'm wrong, but we need to submerge all of our differences if we want to be intelligent and smart about going forward. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark.
Yes, if that's what you have gathered from our reasoning, then you're certainly not, you don't stand to be corrected. Everything's cool. So if that's what you are receiving, then that's positive. Yes.
Yeah, because I feel that anytime you have too many sparks around the party cake, there's going to be an explosion. And if you're a victim, it doesn't matter. Makes no difference if a bit by a smile or by a growl. If you can feel me, and I appreciate the fact that you are saying that it may not occur what you would like to see happen politically in Bermuda, because that's an insight that takes a lot of courage to admit. We are in not a neutral world. There's a global system impacting black and white Bermudians all over the globe. I mean, if you turn on your TV, you see what you see. Even children at 2 years old say, well, I want a certain thing because of what they're influenced by TV. And that's how they talked about the entertainment area and what the children are hearing through the music, and no amount of politics is going to erode that. So there's something from my insight that makes me say that at the end of the day, we need to be able to recognize that there's a global system of white supremacy that's taken place from 500 years ago, when colonialization caused us to look, even from a religious perspective, see our deity as white. And if we, in our minds, see God as white, we see white as right. And that's a very powerful image in our minds. I mean, if everybody's close their eyes now and I say Jesus, you know what image is going to pop into your mind. Since we were children, it's not a black image that we see, irrespective of what the Bible says about, Jesus, So the power and the forces that are taking place beyond politics, you could have a child that goes to school and come in and say, Mommy, Daddy, it could be a male child, and they come in and say, I feel like I'm a female, irrespective of how you train them. It's just the influence of the global world that we're in. So I think the kind of conversations that we're having, if you on the show give your insight on how to correct this global problem locally, is very insightful. I like to encourage more of it, because out of a duality of reasoning, we could reason to create out of many one, which is a national motto of Jamaica. The question is, what is that one going to be? As a leader, as a pilot, like you're saying, I would like to know, as a passenger, where are you leading me? What is the destination that we really want? And you've done your best to be as insightful as you can be on this show to say what we should be looking at, what the definition is, and define what the definition is.
Okay. So based on what the Honorable Mark Bean said earlier, do you think that this would work in terms of how we can get rid of race in politics?
No.
Okay. All right.
I think we have to have a serious conversation about race. We never want to do that. You need to have a show about race.
Okay. All right. No worries.
Yes, that's my opinion.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You have any comment about that in terms of?
Yeah, everything is aspirational. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been accomplished yet. So you have to be prepared to envision it, speak it into existence, assess the risk associated with whatever choices you make, and then you either pursue it or you don't. But I know that this is a perennial challenge that the country is facing. I know that ultimately politics is about power, and not just political power, but cultural and economic power. And everyone who is involved, who is serious about politics, should have that as their main consideration. How do you acquire and allocate power? And the reality is that Bermuda is majority black. Okay, and so naturally you would expect that the government of the day will be majority black. Likewise, Bermuda is in the majority economically controlled by white Bermuda. Okay, and unfortunately we have to speak in white and black terms, but this is just a reality. Now, I know our desire in the FDM is to not only to see a degree of power sharing where white Bermuda is able to fully participate in the political trajectory and direction of the country without any strings attached. Likewise, we would like to see black Bermuda to fully participate in the cultural and economic development of the country without any strings attached. And so when you have a situation where you have both black and white, when you have race-based identity politics, we have to be prepared to enter into a phase of power sharing, giving and receiving. Okay, and what do we need? Black Bermudians, we need more economic power, okay, amongst ourselves. But does that come at the expense of taking or redistributing wealth from white Bermuda? The FDM says no. The FDM will say that we need the freedom to be able to do for ourselves. And by having the freedom to be competitive, once we get to that stage of being competitive, then it's going to be natural for white Bermuda to also, who's going to be competitive, for us to realize that we can actually cooperate with one another vis-a-vis other jurisdictions.
Okay, and
but
so
right now, we're playing, going to the football pitch again.
Yes.
Right now, Bermuda is playing with just one side of the field.
Okay, and that's my question. So let's take education as an example, right?
Yes.
And so there is a real difference between private education and public education. When I say different, not so much in terms of students, but more so in terms of funding. And we know from a lot of different conversations now, right, that for international business, they will fund private education intentionally because they want to be able to say to the non-Bermudan employees that when you come here, we have a space for you and a whole 9 yards. And so what is your comment in terms of leveling the playing field educationally? Because I think the FDM had said that they would not close any school.
Yeah, all self-respecting people who understand the value of power will take the approach of IB or the business community, making sure that their schools are built up.
Yes.
Okay, and it just so happens that they're private schools. Nobody stopped us Barclayites, right, from doing the same, but ourselves. Okay, but there's in Work Academy and the existing private schools in the main, there's persons who have the financial resources. They said, listen, we're going to make the sacrifice to make sure that our children and grandchildren have an educational system that can prepare them to be competitive in the real world in the future. That's what all self-respecting people think. Now, it's not their responsibility to say, well, that needs to apply to everyone in every school.
Okay, so what's your point? Not point. What's your perspective, though, for the Bermuda public education system? Because we have multiple schools with a dwindling population, for sure.
We have an education policy that we have presented, and you can go online and you can see it, right? And basically, it speaks of moving more towards an aided school concept, basically how Whitney, Berkeley, and St. George's Prep used to be, where it's almost a hybrid, where the majority of the focus is based around a school board, right, with a principal reporting to the school board, and then you have teachers and parents directly involved in the progression of the educational service that they're providing. Okay, very little has to do with government or the Ministry of Education.
Except funding, but I got that.
Except for funding.
Right.
Except for funding.
So in summary, I guess then it's more having these schools have more autonomy.
Yes. And with more autonomy, you also foster more competition. Because when you remove competition out of the classroom, you remove the measuring stick for a young person in terms of what real life's about. Real life doesn't give you a ribbon that's for fifth place.
Okay, so that's interesting. And again, I'm not aware in detail of the FDM perspective around education, but I'll ask this question because it comes up in other conversations in terms of participation. So right now, what happens is there are 20 students that participate, and every single one gets a ribbon to say they participated. As opposed in the past, it was no. The top 3 or 5, whatever it is, get a ribbon, and that's it.
Yeah.
So you support that idea of the competitiveness is when only 5 get the recognition and the rest of them don't?
Yeah, I support that is competitiveness, and I do not support in any which way all 12 or 20 getting a ribbon, because that's not what happens in real life.
Well, so what do you do?
Why we again have a standard for our children that's not relevant to real life?
Well, so what do you do though to the child? I am number 15 always.
You let them learn that lesson that life isn't fair, and what you put in is what you get out. It's about merit, MERIT. Right? Too often we find in this current generation where we make excuses and we reject the idea of merit. But everyone has to earn purpose in life, you know.
Gotcha.
And if you got a purpose, it's because God has given you natural talents to fulfill that purpose. It might not be to be a brain surgeon. It might be to be an electrical engineer. But again, should I, because I think that whatever I'm thinking of myself, and I like dissecting frogs, and I want to be a surgeon one day, but it proved that I don't have the aptitude or the academic quality to actually make it. Now, should I get a participation a ribbon? No, I should be told, listen, that's not your talent or strength, man. In fact, your talent and strength is over here. And that's where you can be productive in society. Right.
And it's interesting, by the way, to go back to your analogy earlier, that you are not a fisherman. Your brothers are.
Yeah.
And so somebody at some point, your daddy or somebody would have said, hey, Mark, obviously, or you chose yourself.
Yeah.
You're not a fisherman, so don't pretend you are.
Yeah.
Go off and do something else, become an aviator, and your brothers reverse.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Your natural talents, your natural inclinations, right?
Let
pursue
them be.
it.
Okay.
Okay. And so it might require someone to have that conversation to say, hey, listen, you know, ask yourself that question, who am I and what is my purpose in life? Make sure that education enhances your life purpose, and then love thy neighbor as thyself. Okay. But to say that, because I aspire to be something, but I don't have the quality to make it, or that's not my natural inclination, I still should receive something. No, man. Our children deserve reality.
Okay.
Stop teaching our children falsehoods.
Got you.
Okay, because that creates confusion in their minds, and we wonder why their behavior becomes so discombobulated.
Okay, fair enough.
So out there, right? It's because we lack that rudder, we lack that purpose. Okay. And so from an education perspective, no, we don't have to have private schools, right? But certainly we can create an education system that is reminiscent of the type of education we received when we went Berkeley or Warwick Academy.
Yes.
It was based on competition.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, you take competition out of the classroom, you take purpose out of learning.
Well, caller, thank you for your patience. You're on the, go for it.
Good evening, Mr. Richardson.
Good evening.
And good evening to you.
The Honorable Mark Bean.
Good evening.
Yes,
evening.
Mark Bean. I know Mark Bean. I've always enjoyed listening to Mark. He makes a lot of sense.
Okay, go for it.
Yes, I always enjoyed listening to him. I just want to say I'm enjoying your show. A lot better this week than unfortunately last week. I was a bit confused. But Mr. Bean, I wish you all that you wish for yourself with the FDA. But guess what? If you find at one point the FDA is not going to work for you, we will welcome you back in the PRB with open arms.
Got you.
I wish you all the best, and thank you very, very much. You are definitely, you may not have a clean certificate and all those honors, but you're definitely a very smart man. And you make a lot of sense. God bless you. Anthony, keep up the good work, my brother.
Thank you. Making us both smile for sure.
Thank you, ma'am, and I love you too. I actually do have a Queen's certificate in bear your honor. Not that it makes a difference, but we got it from the Independence Commission.
Yes.
And in terms of the PLP, that's my mother. The PLP is my mother, right? And I asked you a question earlier. Would it be beneficial with the scenario that I explained to you for the PLP of if the FDM came up against the PLP on ideological lines, would it be beneficial to the PLP?
Oh, I think, again, to go about what you just finished saying, it'll increase the competition.
Yes.
And so one of my questions, by the way, which I wanted to ask you later.
We can get there.
But it would be interesting for Bermuda to have an election without race.
Yes.
And that seems almost impossible at this stage, I suppose, but that's the real conversation. And we had a guest on, I don't know, a few weeks ago now. But actually, I went in number 7, right?
Yes, yeah.
Which is down it runs from Harrington School basically right down to the Causeway. Takes into account Tuckerstown and Devil's Hill and the Lauren, and so rich, poor, and everybody in between.
Yes.
And one of the comments from who's now the MP, Robin Tucker, is that the PLP policies are race-based and were lived in the past, right? And so it'll be, and others were saying that they would vote for the best candidate and all this kind of drama. And it would have been interesting to take all that stuff out and just look at the best candidates, right? And that's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
And so I come back to you, though, in terms of, so where we are now, what is your perspective, though, on joining the PLP or joining the OBA?
What you mean joining?
Combining the FDM merge or whichever conversation with either of them to do that. You did it with the OBA already. Is there a time for where Mark Bean says, okay, you know what, let's go back?
Let me make it clear. We haven't had no discussions with the OBA with merging.
Well, not merging, but at least
just having discussion strategy. On how do you collaborate in this current political environment, because you have independents, you have the FDM, you have the OBA, and then you have the juggernaut, which is the PLP.
Right.
And so it's only wise, it only makes sense for leaders to get together and figure out how we can be more effective over this election run.
Right.
It didn't come to fruition, so be it, like, So,
gotcha.
But in terms of us, myself, or going back home to the PLP, and because I wouldn't join the OBA. I tell you already, the OBA needs, as an institution, needs to disappear. Okay, and allow those who support the institution to be absorbed and embraced by either, on ideological lines, the PLP or the FDM. Remember, our policies, right, that we presented in this last election we received compliments from a wide range of people because our policies were very sound. Okay, those policies are a reflection of a center-right conservative approach to government.